Welcome to PUREHUSTLE Podcast. I'm Mike.
And this is Orlando, and we're on episode 392, an update episode.
That's right, 392. Yeah, and it's one of our listeners mentioned in a YouTube comment, which, by the way, if you're not going over to YouTube and commenting, please do that. Leave a comment. It really helps. But they mentioned countdown to 400, and it's pretty crazy to think that we've got the countdown to 400, and we haven't done something big since our 100 fiasco when you got confetti all over my studio and all over my room that I was doing all my reselling in. I would be shipping stuff out and still be finding like confetti and random items. So so maybe we need to do something kind of epic for our 400. We'll have to talk about that. But man, thank you guys all for following along this long. And we are excited to do our update episode because updates are where we get to talk about what's going on in our life reselling and what's going on in the world of reselling in general. And let me tell you, there's a lot of crazy stuff happening right now. It's pretty wild. And so you want to stay tuned. And we also have some spicy bolos, the things you want to be on the lookout for while you're out doing garage sales, thrift stores, doing the Facebook marketplace thing. Be paying attention for these items. So how's it going, Orlando?
Oh, it's going. I mean, there's just a lot going on. And I'm okay with that. I'd rather have that. I'd rather be busy. I'd rather be, constantly having to pack items, having a list, having a source, because that means business is moving. Things are happening. If you're asking me how's it going, and I'm like, yeah, things are kind of slow. I haven't packed much, and I haven't been sourcing, then that means things are bad. And I've been in those seasons, and I do not want to be in those seasons. And so, it's been a lot of exciting stuff. I don't know if exciting is the word for it, but I guess it's a little more upbeat these days than it's been in the last few months. I did have, I've mentioned the podcast where January and February were just brutal. March was pretty brutal. And now we're on April 1st. Actually April 3rd when we dropped this episode, and things have picked up in the last week. Now, I will talk about why I think that's happened. But one of the things I enjoy is that garage sales are back. We still are getting rain on the weekends in San Diego. I don't know why it's only on the weekends, though. It's like every day is clear, and then Saturday, thunderstorms, Sunday, thunderstorms, and then it's clear Monday through Friday. So not sure what's going on there. But, the nice thing about garage sales is you really tend to forget how good the deals are if you haven't been in a while, right? So it'd been over a month and a half since maybe 2 months since I've been consistently sourcing at garage sales. And now that I'm going, I'm thinking like I could spend one morning, drop $100 or $200, and I can make $2,000 to $3,000. Now, it's not every Saturday like that. I don't want people to go, Orlando, I go to garage sales all the time, and I've never made that much. That is true. I will say there was a time when I would go to garage sales and I wouldn't find anything. And I remember those were the early days of my reselling. There's my good friend Kyle. We used to go to garage sales just for fun back in the day. And I remember we would go and we'd always go like, yeah, there's nothing out here. Like, this is terrible. We should have just stayed home and just slept in or whatever. And then as I started getting, more serious about reselling, and I started researching and I started watching more YouTube videos, listening, there wasn't much podcast. There was like Scavenger Life back in the day. And I started learning more. I began to figure out there's always stuff out there at garage sales. Doesn't guarantee that every Saturday, but pretty much every Saturday you can at least find a handful of items. But in general, when it's garage sale season, there's those community garage sales, you can usually pack your car out. So that's kind of what I've been experiencing. This last weekend, I didn't get to go out because of rain, but that's okay because I had a lot of inventory to source through. On the other side of kind of switching things up, Whatnot's been consistent and it's been great. Doing another Whatnot this Thursday at 10 a.m. Appreciate all of you being there. I'm getting better about it, and now I'm probably gonna start bringing in more inventory. Not yet. Maybe give it another week, and then I'll start having longer shows. I just didn't want to overwhelm myself, and that's one of the things I want to tell people. If you're thinking about doing Whatnot, it can seem very overwhelming. And so if you're like, hey, I'm gonna sell 50 items, I'm gonna pack 50 items. I don't think you're fully aware of what that means. Remember, Mike, when we sold out the whole store, how miserable that was? Like, I remember you had to like leave because we ran out of time.
Yeah, I got to a point where I had to go. I had other stuff going on. My wife was there helping for a while, especially towards the end of the show, the last half of the show we did, and trying to organize the packing. I ended up coming back, helping more, and then had to leave again. So yeah, it was a part of it too, is just our ignorance is really all we could say. I think we did a good job. I think the show was entertaining.
Oh, yeah, I think so too.
We had great, stuff to sell. We gave a lot of things away for good prices. And I think that the people who were on the auctions had a good time. But I think that we just weren't prepared as far as like, how do we organize this stuff? How do we make sure, like, we were just kind of like putting things in piles, trying to label things as we went, it was tough. And so, yeah, it's one of those things where the more you do something like that, the easier it gets, because you just have a system. Like, imagine the amount of things you sell on eBay today, the amount of things you sell on a regular basis throughout the week. If this was like week one of you reselling and you had to sell and ship and pack all this, you couldn't do it, right? Because you didn't have the systems in place. You didn't know what you were doing. And so, it comes with time. And that's one of the reasons, like you said, like, start slowly with stuff, because then you can learn as you go. And before you get to a place where you have so much pressure, you've kind of got it figured out.
Yeah. And that's the beauty of it. I'm thinking about, actually right now, I was running a little bit, like 5 minutes late to the podcast, right? Because I had just a ton of items to pack. And I was able to pack 13 items within an hour. And that's not too bad. And it ranged from, I had a jersey, I had a couple of shirts, to I had, some like vintage train stuff that I had to pack and make sure, they're packed well with packing paper and priority boxes. And all the way to, I also had this huge luggage thing I had to pack, and I was able to get it done. I didn't stress about it. I knew in my mind exactly how long it would take to pack. But if you go into a one-night show and you're like, I'm going to sell 50 items, and you really haven't had experience of packing a lot, you will feel like it's an all-day thing. And that's how I felt when we did that show, Mike. I don't know how many items we sold. I think we sold like 150. And luckily there were clothing, so it wasn't that tough. But it took time. It took organizing and all that. So that's been great. I also want to talk about our sponsor for this episode, Vendoo. Because that goes into my update. So if you haven't checked out Vendoo, right now is a great time to get connected with Vendoo, because, eBay has been kind of, it's hit or miss lately, right? There's no guarantees, and you can put your items in front of other eyes. And so lately I've been using Vendoo. And if you want to use Vendoo and you want to get 25% off that first month, you could go to our link below and use our code PUREHUSTLE. And with that code PUREHUSTLE and that link, you'll get 25% off the first month, and you can check it out. And here's the thing that's been awesome about using Vendoo is that they have background removal for all your images. So I have some old stuff that were back in the day when I had like a mannequin and I didn't have the big light box and my lighting was off. And that background removal has been instant on Vendoo. So it's been pretty cool. And we'll talk about later, but Mercari has no selling fees now. And there's a catch to that. But if you're thinking about, hey, I want a place where I can cross-post on Poshmark, I want to be able to cross-post on Mercari, I want to get stuff on Grilled, I want to get Depop, Vendoo is a great tool. And use our code PUREHUSTLE, and you'll get 25% off the first month. So I've been cross-posting with Vendoo, and it's been good. It's been, it's one of those things where at first, you're like, it depends on the interface, and you're like, man, if this interface is bad, like, I don't know if I want to do this. But Vendoo is very easy. And I'm not just saying that because we're sponsored. It's just because it is. It is. I go on there and it tells me exactly what I need to fix on Poshmark for it to go to Poshmark, what I need to fix on Mercari for it to go to Mercari. And so I've been able to do that quickly. I can, like, in a span of about an hour, I can get about 50 to 80 listings like ready to roll and post it. So I've had a few sales there, and I forget about how, Poshmark is like, it gets there, then you have to wait 3 days for your money to be released. And I remember that was a big deal back in the day, but that was only a big deal because eBay wasn't on managed payments. And if you remember, you used to be able to, sell stuff on eBay. It instantly went to your PayPal account. And that was a plus, because then you had that money if you wanted to source the next day. And then eBay, had promised that, this money would be available and so on, but it's just not. Like, if you sell on eBay, you're still waiting 2 or 3 days to cash out your money. And so, it's been good. It's been good. I've been all about just staying focused on eBay. And I still, I believe that you should, if you're new to reselling, start off, first of all, learning the platform really well. And then if you want to get more eyes on it, Vendoo's the way, cross-posting's the way, and you can definitely do it. The other thing, and this last thing I'm going to end on my update here, because it is the most controversial. I want to hear your thoughts on this. So eBay's been, it hasn't been the best lately. And I've done everything. I've listed, I've been listing, especially since that video game haul, at least, 15 items a day, close to 30 a day. I've also been, I ship same day. Somebody buys something at 2:00, I'll get it to the post office before it closes at 5, unless it's something huge that I have to pack. I have free returns. I'm a top rated seller. I've done everything. And I'm just like, this is not doing it. And I've had promoted listings. So I went, to me, this is a wild move. I went to promoted listings and I removed the cap. And so I have dynamic ad rates with no cap. Not like Gen Z no cap. Like there's no, like, if they want to charge me 12% promoted, they can. If they want to go 20%, they
to
can.
the moon.
To the moon. And you know what? Remember, those screens where it shows you your metrics, like your impressions and all that? They went from red to green within a day. And like all the impressions skyrocketed. The offers started coming in. Like it's like somehow it triggered eBay and told eBay, you need to start making sales because this guy's going to start paying you guys more. And so, yeah, sales have been back to normal. I would say they've been almost to Q4 levels, which isn't saying a lot for the last Q4. But, if this carries on, I'm going to do this. Now, I'm not getting my hopes up.
Yeah, the question, though, is so the total number of sales has gone up.
Correct.
But if your net profit has gone down, then maybe you're still making more this month than you made the previous month. That's not what I mean on that. But like your total profit you're making per average items that you're selling, like your total
your ASP.
Yeah. So if you're making less off of each item than you were in the past, like, I mean, it's still worth it if you need to move items, but it's just tough. And I guess it's hard because you got to run like different types of testing to figure out like for instance, if you're doing 12% ad, 15% ad, 40%, like, you know what I mean? I don't know what number they're raising it to, but whatever that number is that you're paying on that dynamic ad rates is, are you making up for that, in your sales? I don't know. It's and could you do something else? Could you just run a sale like a 10% off instead of adding 10% extra? Would that have the same effect?
Well, we've talked about that, and eBay has addressed it that like sales. This is directly from eBay ads. At that meeting when I went to in the fall, they said if you're running sales less than 15%, they're not going to be effective. In order for your sales to be effective in the algorithm, they have to be at least at 15%. If you have the option of running a sale or having promoted listings, so for example, I've heard people say, yeah, instead of running a 20% off sale, I'm doing 20% promoted listings. They have directly said that's not going to change things because in some categories, like the caps are already at 12%. So
yeah, I mean, I guess the question, what it really would come down to is, there's two pots you're pulling from, right? Like either you're giving more of the sale profit to eBay or you're giving a better deal to the customer, right? So it's going to come down to, I mean, you could tell eBay, I'm going to give you 100% of the sell, but if there's not enough movement and people who want that item at that price, then it's still not going to sell. So it's just going to depend. Like you got to find that balance, that sweet spot of, what price will it actually sell at, and how much of eBay pushing it at that price will help versus it just is maybe overpriced.
So let me address a few things here. So the number one thing is my costs are so low that I'm not bothered by it, right? And so I've looked at the items that I've sold, and the highest I've had is about 12.35% of promoted. Okay, and then that's but here's the thing. Like I'm looking right now at a luggage piece that I paid $5 for and I sold it for $75. Right? 12%, doesn't, is it 12.35%? Doesn't phase me. Right? It's like if somebody had sent me an offer that was lower, that was like 15% lower, I would have taken it anyways. Right? So to me, my cost of goods is what factors into this. Now, if I was doing retail arbitrage, like let's say Nike shoes, or I was going to Marshall and TJ Maxx and I had to double my money to, at least guarantee that I break even, because of promoted listings, then you're in trouble. But, we're talking about, as somebody has branded me, El Cheapo, when I go to garage sales, I'm 5Xing, I'm 10Xing on the stuff that I buy. Right. So am I willing to sell stuff and make less because of fees than I would than sitting around and hoping that a sale would happen? I'd rather take less profit and move on. Like that's where I'm at, because the reality is right now, you know, I have a time frame, and if business was going the way it was going in January for another 6 months, I'm in a mess. Like I start dipping into like, hey, I need to get into savings and maybe need to dip into retirement, whatever it is. And also a lot of things. And, you know, to be real with you guys, a lot of things that we're pushing this is we're potentially in a crypto bull run, and I wanted to get some cash flow into the bull market if it is, unless we've topped already. And so I was like, I don't care. Like, I'm not going to hold out for an extra $5-10 when I could have that, you know, that quick money right now. And so to me, it was worth it to me. So this is what I'll say to end this discussion is, unless you want to add more, which I'm fine with, if your costs are low, it doesn't hurt. It doesn't hurt. Like that's the thing. Again, when you buy, that's when you make your money, because that's when you figure out how much you're able to negotiate on an item, how much you're willing to sell it for. At the same time, you know, eBay likes sales, right? So if you know, if you go like several days and you're only getting like 2 or 3 sales, I find that the algorithm just gets used to it. Like if you're getting 2 to 3 sales, like you're not going to out of nowhere like start making 10 sales a day. Like if it's just 2 or 3 and it's dead like that, it could be dead like that for a long time. So you need something to jolt it. And you know, I know there's a lot of great YouTubers I respect that they don't even do promoted listings. But I don't find that for me has worked. It just hasn't. And sometimes you got to pay the piper, and that's what I've chosen to do. And I'm okay with it, because again, it's all about cost. Pay low, sell high, and you should succeed in reselling. All right. Any more you want to add to that?
No, I think that's good.
Okay. All right. So how are things going for you?
Man, I mean, things are going pretty good. It's this weekend was, you know, Easter weekend. So the garage sales for the most part were a lot of, I don't even know if I'd call them garage sales, but there were so many like garage sale signs out and about, like on Friday, Saturday. And all of them are, not all, but a good number of them were Easter sales, right? It's people trying to sell like baskets and trinkets and things like that, you know, are Easter related stuff. And it reminded me of my mom was dating this guy when I was in high school. Actually, I was in middle school at the time, and they got a one of those, what are they? Oriental Trading. They got an Oriental Trading Company magazine, and they were like, this stuff is so cheap. Like, let's do this. Let's buy like a whole bunch of stuff from this, and then we could sell it at a garage sale. And they were kind of doing the, you know, that whole wholesaling thing and trying to like set up a little booth. But we tried to do it out in front of our house. I remember 2 weekends we tried that, and nobody wanted the cheap junk, you know. But I feel like that's kind of what a lot of the signs were like, garage sale this way, and you go there and it's like people just trying to sell like Easter baskets and stuff, and good for them. I mean, you got to hustle. You're trying to do stuff. There's a little bit. I purposely didn't do a lot of reselling this weekend, you know, it being Easter and all, but just driving around like, oh, look, there's a garage sale. Oh, not a real one. So that was a little bit frustrating, but you know, over the last couple of weeks since the last time we did an update episode, I've done some garage sales and thrift stores, and have found a lot of just kind of like bread and butter items, a handful of electronics. I don't love like VCRs. A lot of times when I say electronics, I'm thinking back to the early days of PUREHUSTLE podcast when I was picking up VCRs. But, you know, little handheld electronic. Yeah. But like little handheld, like electronic games like solitaire and that kind of stuff. Like sometimes those can do really well on eBay. So those types of things, still doing okay on finding some books at garage sales. You can occasionally get some textbooks. I live in a college town. I know you do too in San Diego, but this is like college town because it's so small, and we've got a big university here. So there's, you know, lots of college level books, especially, you know, in certain niches and categories that can do well. So, you know, I've been picking up some things, doing okay with that. But one of the things that I've really been thinking about, you remember the good old days, and it's hard to believe it was like 3 years ago now, of yard sale treasure map.
Oh yeah, I remember those when you could plan it out and everything. Those were good times.
So Craigslist had an API with, you know, this other app, and the app had access to Craigslist data and was able to basically scrap the Craigslist data and create really easy to find garage sales, because that was the hard part, is trying to figure out where are the garage sales, when are they at. And it would pull from various things, and people could even post on Garage Sale Treasure Map. And it was a really useful tool. I feel like it was one of the most useful garage sale tools I've ever used. Yep. And then that went away, which is a bummer, but I was still able to in San Diego, which I think most of the garage sales tended to, at least the ones I was going to, were on Craigslist. And so I was able to use the map feature, pick the day you wanted to start. So still not completely unusable. It was a usable process. But here, now where I'm at, I'm noticing that just Craigslist is not where garage sales are posted. They're all on Facebook Marketplace.
Really? Out there, huh?
Facebook Marketplace is the worst for trying to organize and find garage sales.
Yes,
like,
it is really bad.
You can't get a map system. It's hard to tell when they were posted. A lot of times it doesn't have the date on it. So you could see a garage sale with the location, but like there's not like features. Like Facebook Marketplace doesn't have like a specialized like listing category, at least from what I can tell based off the listings I see for garage sales. So you don't have like start time, end time, unless they put that in their listing, which you'd be surprised how many of them will put the start time, but not the date. And then they never take it down. So you're like, oh wait, I saw that one last week. So yeah, good thing I'm not driving out there again because it's not this week. And so then there's ways you can then filter, okay, like how recent were they posted? But then you got to figure out like, okay, like, do I do a week in case I'm doing early? Do I just do one day? Am I going to miss some if I do, only one day? So I've been putting together some strategies and tips and tricks to like filter Facebook Marketplace, some other things that I could do. And I think I've come up with some stuff and I've watched some things that I think are very useful. And so I want to I'm going to put together like a YouTube video of strategies for kind of mapping out garage sales utilizing Facebook Marketplace, which is one of the least user-friendly ways of doing it. But it's what a lot of people are stuck with. So before I make that video, though, I know I might be missing some things. So I would just love if people want to put in the comments, how they use Facebook Marketplace to find garage sales, or if there's other tools they're using to find garage sales. Share with the community. I'll kind of compile all that together and try and put something out because I think that's one of the barriers I'm experiencing here. And if it's me here, I know there's a lot of people experiencing the same thing. So I'd love for people to put in the comments below how they're finding garage sales other than just driving around. Is it Craigslist still? Are you using Facebook Marketplace? Sometimes I think like estates.com or estatesale.com. I use that one quite a bit too. But there's limitations. It's just, it's clunky. And so if you have tips and tricks and strategies, put them in the comments below. I'd love to kind of like look through that, kind of compile it together and then make a how-to video that we can all benefit from. So that's kind of been what's going on with me as far as garage sales go. But the other thing, kind of another interesting thing is I don't know what business bank account you use. I was using Bank of America because I had a bank.
I do not like Bank of America.
Yeah, so my personal bank account is through Bank of America. I've had them since I got married, so it would be hard to leave them just because I've got so much history with them, and it's just kind of easy. All my accounts are set up. Everything auto pays from there. So when I opened a bank account, I just used them. And at the time, I wasn't getting any fees because I kept a high enough balance. I was using my debit card enough. And I've kind of shifted to not using my debit card quite as much. And right before tax time, I used a lot of my money in my bank account to, before the end of the year last year, for business expenses, right? Like there were things I wanted to do, like for my shed, for my garage. There was like updates I wanted to do to the house that were going to be business related. And I wanted to use that money for a tax write-off. And I had a few big opportunities come up. So my business bank account for the last couple months has been under that threshold of no fees. As money's coming in, I'm just spending it, right? Like, so I just don't have that like stuck capital, and I'm not using my business debit card because I mostly run in cash when you're at garage sales and stuff.
Yeah.
So I switched over. My wife is starting a little side hustle thing for a program she's doing. And we were trying to find a bank account for her. And we decided to go with Bluevine. So I noticed on our ads, like through Podbean, that occasionally Bluevine is one of the advertisements. We're technically not sponsored by Bluevine. I'm not saying like, hey, use Bluevine or anything like that. But I decided to give it a try because it's free. It's a free business account. It's an online business account, so you have to use like ATMs and stuff, but like all of the transactions that happen are online. And what's really cool is it gives you access to like, it's a crazy number. I think it's like 10, it's like sub accounts. So you can have an account that's for like eBay fees, and you can have an account that's for like capital savings, an account for various, like you could have lots of categories. So as money comes in, you can kind of allocate it within your bank account, and it keeps track. Like you've got separate accounts, so you're not like, trying to figure out like how much do I have for like capital that I'm wanting to spend, how much do I have for like upcoming tax time, how much you're not having to keep track of that on a separate like ledger. It's I just put things into different accounts. So I'm interested to see how it works out, being that it's pretty much all online, which for the most part isn't a problem, other than the fact that you've got to like do ATM deposits and withdrawals, which again limits you to not being able to get the ones. You still got to go into a bank, but because I have a personal bank account, I could take money in and get it exchanged. But I'm interested to see how Bluevine works. I'm excited because I looked at my eBay fees that were hitting my business account, and I was getting paid like a charge $16 a month just to have my account open for like the last 3 months. And I'm like, man, that adds up. That starts if I go a couple years with just, and hopefully that wouldn't be the case. I would get my numbers up.
You're not getting money taken out of your eBay available funds. Like no, you're paying it through.
So because I have an eBay business account, this is the only thing I use that account for is for reselling, right? And so what I'm saying is my Bank of America account, which I just call my eBay account, right? But my Bank of America account, I was a $16 just like service fee, which seems like a small thing, but it adds up, right? Like I could use $16 for some other resale related subscription,
Interesting. Yeah, I do a little bit different. I put everything on credit if it's not garage sale related. So I do have like a separate account just for all my reselling cash stuff. And then anything I do at a thrift store, anything I buy supplies, I keep it on the same credit card. Just so it's easy that way. That's just the way I do. I'm not saying people need to do it that way. I just find it easy, and that's the only thing I do with that credit card. Because I would, if you're new to reselling, you do want to keep things separate. It just keeps your bookkeeping a lot easier. And they're like, you can put credit cards on different bookkeeping services, and it's able to allocate it. I just like doing it that way. So I get it. I do remember one time, I don't know, I cleaned out all my funds on one of my my eBay cash accounts, and then they charged me like the $15 low deposit fee or something. And I remember calling them, and I'm like, you guys, I've had money here for years, and the one time I don't, you snipe in there and you charge me $15. And they refused to remove it. They charged me the $15. I'm like, you bankers, gotta tell you. So anyways, well, good. And I gotta say, the good thing, again, about reselling, if you don't think about this, and I don't advise everyone to do this, is that when you sometimes want to, you got those fees, you can attach them to a credit card. And if you're smart about it, and I know it's not the Dave Ramsey way, you can like add up points, right? And those points eventually can lead to points for traveling or points for dining and so on. So that's something else to think about. I used to do that a lot more back in the day when it used to be connected to PayPal. I don't do it as much, but just something to think about, because I know people that spend thousands on eBay fees and they do it on their credit card and they get points. I stopped doing it because I don't know. I just stopped doing it. I don't know why. Maybe I need to get back into it, but it wasn't as seamless as it used to be. So all right. So any random stories, Mike?
Yeah, I mean, I don't have a great like reselling related random story, but kind of like the mind of a reseller or a hustler in general. So I don't know if you're aware, but we have on April 8th, so Monday, this coming Monday, is a total eclipse going across the United States in certain parts. So you may have an eclipse. Like so, eclipse. It's like a big deal. So there's going to be there's going to be a total eclipse going through like the central Texas, like, and the city I'm in, it's like right in the middle. So like there's like basically a line of like where you get total eclipse, and then like the closer you are to the center of that line, the longer the total eclipse will be, and then the further away you are, the shorter the amount of time. And then as you go out, then you might see like a partial eclipse. But anyways, where I'm at, we're in the path of totality. So we're going to have for over 4 minutes, like complete darkness. So it's going to be wild. And it's in fact, so many people, and my city is not obviously the only one. It's going to cut across big portions of the United States. But we're one of the bigger cities that's getting hit through in this part of the country. And so they're expecting the population of our city is almost going to double that weekend, the amount of people coming from out of town. And so many people have, I mean, I've talked to people who that like are renting out, like they've got some like farmland, and so they're like renting out like guest house they have on it, or they're letting people come and park on their property to like view it, and they're charging parking, right? Like how a certain amount per car to like park and watch the eclipse, because we don't have the infrastructure for all of the people who are coming. All the hotel, the prices are just skyrocketing. I mean, they're all sold out, but like the prices were just crazy. People have been planning for years, knowing this eclipse was coming to come here. And so I'm already thinking like, man, those people are finding ways to hustle. And there was a little while there, like a couple months ago, when I first kind of found out about the eclipse, where I was considering like, oh, maybe we should like make some kind of shirts or some kind of things to like sell on the side of the road, with so many people coming, especially because, being in Waco, we have the silos. So Chip and Joanna Gaines, they have that TV show on HGTV. It's so many people come to Waco. It's kind of like a tourist trap because people want to see
the Branch Davidians.
No, not that group. The other group, the Gaines, the Chip and the other.
I know.
I was gonna joke and say the other cult, but I don't want to be mean. I think they're great. But it is kind of like there's definitely a cult of personality there where people want to come and see. But anyways. But maybe I used that phrase incorrectly, so I apologize if I did. I'm not trying to be offensive to anybody, but anyways,
who are you? Okay.
I just mean, I don't know. I like I said, I may have used that phrase incorrectly. But
I mean, are there correct?
There's a lot of people who like. There's a lot of people who come to Waco, anyways, and so I think a lot of people are going to come, and I mean, a lot of people will come for the eclipse. So part of me is thinking, should I try and make some money? There's a lot of money to be made in an event like this. I know a guy who does barbecue. He's going to set up a barbecue thing and be selling at a different event. So there's a lot of money to be made. But then I'm also like, this is kind of like a once in a lifetime thing. Bought the glasses to be able to watch it with my kids. And they're already advising, if you don't have to, don't leave your home. Cause it's there's going to be so many people out. So I think I'm going to let this opportunity slip by me. I don't think I'm going to try and make shirts and sell them, or cause you could do creative stuff. You could do things that have to do with the silos and Magnolia and the Chip and Joanna Gaines following with the eclipse, and kind of bank off of that. I'm sure there's some copyright stuff there, but people bootleg some shirts and stuff like that, or just fun, clever things, make some memeable type shirts about the eclipse and Waco. You like you said, the Branch Davidians, you could probably even make some stuff on that. Was probably not super tasteful, but you probably could, right? There's money to be made. People are going to make a ton of money, but sometimes you also realize sometimes you just got to enjoy life, and not everything has to be making money. But it's interesting as a hustler, as a reseller, you're always thinking that can I make money on this?
Oh, I would take advantage. I would sit down right now and just try to figure out what you can do. Because if it's a one in a lifetime thing, why not make a few $100 or a few thousand? There has to be something. On a side note, are the chickens nearby?
Oh, can you hear them?
Yeah, I can hear them chirp. I was like, what is that? No, I think it's cool, but I was like, what is that noise? I'm like, oh yeah.
Yeah, they're right behind my green screen.
Let us know in the comments if you hear the chickens.
Hopefully they'll. So on the live, they probably hear them because it's coming through the mic the way it's coming through here. But on the podcast, I'm hoping it's a little bit less. That they probably comes through a little bit. Yeah, that loud, that high pitched cheep though is hard to get out of. Or chirp is hard to get out of.
I just thought it was funny. That's all. Now, speaking of opportunities, so this again, it's not a random story, but it just hit me the other day. How many opportunities there are in reselling. I think a lot of people get stuck. I find that if you're new, I'll never forget, and I've shared this story before. I remember going to a Salvation Army, and I was like, I'm gonna try to be one of those guys that find stuff at thrift stores. And I remember looking around, and I found a General Electric alarm clock, and it was worth nothing. And I'm like, man, there's nothing to be found. Right? I shared earlier in the podcast how I remember going to garage sales and going, yeah, there's nothing to pick up. But this last week, I've had all kinds of different sourcing. I bought stuff at auction. I went to the bins and I found a whole bunch of golf clubs that I paid $1 for each of them, and I should be able to flip them for 30 to 40. And yeah, I've been going back to the bins at least once a week to see, and it is getting better. I actually know one of the guys that runs a place, and He was telling me, we're trying to get more bins out and stuff. And so I was like, all right, good. And, I found a bunch of golf clubs, which I never really source golf clubs. But I figured if $1 a piece and the comps look like I can sell them for 30 to 40, why not? I went to garage sales. I found stuff at garage sales. I have local deals. I just had actually somebody today hit me up with some vintage Sports Illustrated magazines and some other Disneyland stuff. And here's the thing: as you grow as a reseller, there's always opportunity.
Come on, hustlers!
If you find yourself in a place that there's nothing, I would encourage you to venture out into different ways. Now, I agree that I'm in an urban area, because I know some of you are saying, "Well, Orlando, you're in San Diego." Of course, there's opportunity. But I'll never forget when I visited my good friends in Wisconsin. Whenever I go out there, I always hit up Craigslist. I always hit up OfferUp, Facebook Marketplace, and I always end up sourcing. And I'm coming from out of town. I'm not even from the area. And, it's funny because I'll go to thrift stores there and I'll do an Instagram story, and people will go, "Orlando, don't come to these parts. Like, I know you're visiting, but, this is our honey hole here." And I'm like, I get it. But you know what? I'm sure other areas where you can source things for a lot more money. A lot that are a lot more profitable. Like, oh yeah, I have my connections, to get Harley Davidson here. I have a connection for video games, and so the reason I say this is I came to this realization because I've sourced this week from so many places: local deals, the bins, thrift stores, garage sales, even some retail arbitrage opportunities that came up, and I wasn't even trying; it just happened. And so, if you're getting discouraged, definitely reach out, find other ways to source, because there is plenty of opportunity for you out there. So it's not a random story, but just a note of encouragement for everyone out there. All right. Now, another thing that might discourage you this season is taxes, right? It is April, right? For some of you, it is doomsday. It's April 1st today when we're recording. But, when you're hearing this, April 3rd, 12 more days. And you're like, how am I going to get my taxes done? I didn't do any bookkeeping for eBay or Poshmark, or I don't know what to do. Listen, if you go to My Reseller Genie, you get free 15% off the first month by using our code PUREHUSTLE, going to the link below. And even if you don't use our code, it's still a very valuable tool. It'll import everything from the year before. It'll break down your shipping fees. It'll help you do profit and loss. It'll help you to figure out cost of goods. Definitely check out My Reseller Genie, and it will help you out. So it's been a great help to me, because I am not the most organized person as far as bookkeeping goes, but I love the fact that it runs in the background. And then when I meet with my tax person, I give them all the My Reseller Genie stuff, and they're able to sort it out, and things are all good. So check out My Reseller Genie. And one last thing, if you haven't, jumped on our Discord and you want to, just meet a community that's thriving and reselling, the way to do that is going to our Patreon. Patreon.com/PureHustle, or go and link below for $5.55 a month. I mean, Mike and I today had a meeting about our podcast, like things we could do to like improve things here and there. We didn't even bring up like bringing costs. We never it didn't even come up once to because $5.55 a month, it's a steal. I gotta tell you, you not only are you supporting the podcast, but you're able to go on the Discord, find bolos, get help from individuals, just communicate with people. So definitely check it out. And also the freebies are, we're on social media, Pure Hustle Podcast on all platforms, Pure Hustle Cast on Twitter. And as always, you can give us a call at 619-738-1170, 619-738-1170, or shoot us an email at purehustlepodcast@gmail.com. And as always, thankful for all the iTunes reviews. If you haven't given us an iTunes reviews, just hop on over to Apple iTunes, let people know why you love the podcast and that 5 stars. And last of all, if you're listening to us, but you haven't checked us out on YouTube, especially because I think we're planning on dropping different content over the next few months, like how-tos on different things, make sure to subscribe to YouTube, hit that bell notification, and like this podcast. All right, we got some reseller topics to talk about.
That's right. Real quick, before we do that, though, did we get our phone number thing resolved?
It will be fixed by the time this podcast drops.
Yeah, we're good to go. It's all good. Don't even worry about it. If you're listening to that behind the stage stuff, don't worry about it. You didn't hear it. We broke the
619-738-1170. We're there.
That's right. All right, here we go. Oh, that's the wrong sound effect. I started with the hustle of the week one. Let's do the right one. Tune in
next week for that.
Mercari has shooken up the reselling world. Is it good or bad? Time will tell. plus the River Barbie and no more gatekeeping in vintage clothing. All of this and more on Reseller News. That was pretty good, right?
Well, yes. The funny thing is, on your separate audio it records, but when I'm listening to it through my headphones right now, I don't know what you're saying. I just see your mouth moving. So it ends up on the podcast, though. It does end up on the podcast. So on our audio track. So yeah, pretty good, Mike. Good job.
Thank you. Yeah, I think I nailed it. I think it was my best one yet.
All right, there you go. There you go. All right. If you have not been on social media, or you
good for
have
you.
Never sold a Mercari, good for you. Unless you're not following PUREHUSTLE podcast. Mercari,
shame on you,
has disrupted the reselling world. And we talked about this in our live, and people had very strong opinions on the live about their thoughts on this. I see it as a positive. I know Mercari got a lot of hate for this, especially from buyers. So I'm sure Mike's going to bring the hate. I'm joking, but a different view. So here's what's happened. If you've not been in the social media world, if you've not received anything, Mercari has ended seller fees. Now, there's a catch to it. So let me talk to you about the catches to it. Number one is no more seller fees. Instead, buyers pay the seller fees.
They just transferred the fee from one group to the other.
Correct.
Right.
So to me, that's a win. Now, I know Mercari has, things have been kind of rough for Mercari, and it's always been like that for Mercari from the beginning. Mercari was the best number one selling platform in Japan. When they came over here years ago, they actually had zero seller fees back when they started because they wanted everybody to jump on. But they didn't charge anybody. They just ate the cost. Well, now they're doing something different. Not only that, buyers can now return things, okay, for any reason. And a lot of people flipped out, and I don't understand why, because eBay, you can return things for any reason too. You might say, oh, I don't offer returns. Guess what? If they're like, this doesn't look like what I ordered, or there's something wrong with it, eBay, in their money back guarantee, will force the return on you. So there's no such thing as no returns. The good thing about Mercari is in their returns is that buyers have 3 days to open a return. If after 3 days, things aren't handled, then that's it. Instead of eBay's 30 days. Okay. On top of that, Mercari is covering the shipping if the item is less than 50 pounds. Right. So let me, I'll just read what Mercari says directly. But Mercari has like a different terms that they're using for each of these. But Mercari calls it, I think it's nominal amount. So anything, here you go. Now, so here's a policy. Mercari return policy reflects a balance between the needs of both parties to the transaction. If a buyer has a concern about an item that they received, they must initiate a return request through the order status page or the rating page within 72 hours of the carrier confirmed local delivery time. I think that's great, right? A lot of people worry about eBay. eBay, even if you don't offer returns, people have 30 days to still bring something up against you. When a buyer has raised the transaction or when more than 72 hours have passed, returns are not permitted. Sellers are required to provide shipping labels for the buyers to return the items that are over 50 pounds. Item weight is determined by the actual weight of the item or the dimensional weight of the package, whichever is greater. Right? So to me, that's a win still. I mean, 50 pounds, unless you are constantly shipping out 50 pounds, like there's a lot of weight. Like there's no shoes that weigh 50 pounds, no clothing, no vintage toys. Most electronics, for the most part, are under 50 pounds. So the fact that Mercari is stepping in and taking care of that, I think that's a win. The big controversy also that happened was that Mercari was going to charge sellers $2 for every direct deposit from Mercari to their bank account. And then I think they did I'm trying to, I'll read this out and you tell me what this sounds like to me, but I think Mercari did away with it because of all the complaints with it. And here's the deal. Just, if you have a $5 sale, don't deposit that $5 into your Mercari for that $2 fee. Wait until you got a decent amount. What I think Mercari is trying to do is they're trying to hold on to this money to make interest on it, right? Because that's another way. eBay does the same thing. This is why when you make money on eBay doesn't release the funds because eBay is making money on the interest from all the sellers, the deposits that they get into managed payments. So let me read this and then I'll stop talking. I want to hear Mike's thoughts on this. So as far as the fees for the $2, it said on March 27th, 2024, Mercari announced that it would begin charging a $2 fee for all direct deposit requests, effective immediately through April 3rd, 11:59 p.m. Pacific Standard Time. Mercari will waive the direct deposit fee requests made prior to the end of the waiver period for all eligible account holders. All requests made after the end of the waiver period will incur the charge. So I'm guessing you're still going to get charged. They're just waiving it for some people. Now, here's the other catch. The no seller fees is on new listings. Okay, new listings. So that's where a lot of people were upset, because a lot of people had hundreds of thousands of listings and it doesn't count. Now, I do wonder if you end it and you do a new listing on your item, like obviously it's going to be a new listing, right? Yeah. So it's not going to charge you the seller fees. So,
yeah, I mean, it's a weird. I mean, I don't know if that may have been something people were upset about for sure. There was some upset with that, but I think it's more than just that though, right? Because it kind of came out of nowhere. And one of the things I want to say on this is, if you want a more like thorough discussion on this, if you want to hear Orlando and me talk about this a little bit more in depth, check out our Monday mini episode. We were live, we were interacting with people on the live. We kind of went into a little bit more depth on our thoughts and kind of where we line on that. And there's also some pretty awesome music on that episode, so go check that out if you haven't gone over. But I think a big part of it is this kind of came out of nowhere. And I think, initially it's one of those things where it's like you're robbing Peter to pay Paul. Like the fee just got shifted. And I think what a lot of people were worried about, the big part was the returns. I mean, a lot of people are going to be concerned about that and are concerned about that. But the other aspect of it is the people who have the foresight of saying like, okay, like, yeah, this is great for me, but I'm just passing that fee on to my buyer. Now, the reality is we all take that into consideration anyways. When you list something, one of the things I'm taking into consideration is the cost that I paid for that item, the fees it's going to cost me to list it, and what it's going to take for me to ship it. I'm already building that in. And so if I'm going to promote it, right? Like all of those things kind of get built into the total price. And so some of us, like if people who are doing free shipping, well, they're not actually shipping the items for free on eBay. It's not like, well, I did free shipping, so I get to just take this and drop it off at the post office and not pay anything. No, you build that into your price. And so it makes it easy for a customer to look at a price and say, oh, this is how much I'm paying. Am I happy with that? But if they then have to say, oh, I like this price. Oh, but then there's going to be this fee. Oh, and then this fee. And then, oh, and then there's this. And then at the end, because it's already stinks when you deal with taxes, you're like, oh man, I wanted to pay this. Now there's all these taxes. And then there's a fee and a processing fee and all those things get added on. Then the buyers feel like they're being nickeled and dimed. And even if the total price that they're paying is what the seller, like let's say the seller would have charged $20 flat and they ended up having to sell it for, $18, and the buyer, by the time they're done paying all the fees, gets to almost 20 or just over 20, it's going to feel worse, right? Because you see all the little this and this and this. And I think people are worried that's going to chase people away from Mercari. Like Mercari is already not the biggest. I mean, it's great for sellers. You can get, if all of a sudden Mercari gets a tenfold people jumping on like, oh, I'm going to sell on Mercari because Mercari makes it easier. It doesn't cost me as much. But if their buyers don't increase by that amount as well, and if the buyers that are on there start to jump ship, like, man, I don't want to pay for all these extra fees. I'm not buying on this site anymore. That's where I think people are worried. Like, is it long-term going to be sustainable for Mercari? Is it a good PR? Now, I think the fact that they're offering the returns, that's like they had to give and take, right? Like they're giving something to the sellers. They kind of have to give something to the buyers too and say, yeah, you have to pay these fees, but you have that confidence of like, if something goes wrong with this item, I can return it. And so we'll have to see it obviously caused waves in the reseller community in the seller side, but I'm interested to see like what the impact is going to be on the buyer side. Cause ultimately we need those buyers there too.
Yeah. I don't know. I will say the free returns, like, I think it affects buyers. I mean, the sellers more than it affects buyers, right? Because buyers, I think most of the time, if they want to buy things, they're going to want somebody that they can return things, right? They want confidence. And so will that bring in more people? I'm not sure. Well, the question is too, is it going to bring the price of things down, right? Will people, it's in order to stay competitive, will they drop their prices, right? Knowing that the fees are there and the buyers are aware of that. I don't know. It's an interesting experiment. It's like a Hail Mary.
Yeah, I mean, but the thing is, the prices will drop, but like, will the net price drop, right? Like the initial price on the item might drop, but after all the fees, it might end up being pretty close to the same, give or take. I mean, obviously there's going to be, variance on both sides of that, but you figure if I used to be able to sell for $20 and I was eating those fees, but now buyers don't want to pay $23 for this item with all the fees. They only want to pay $20 and have it. Now I have to lower my price so that it gets there. So like one way or another, the seller is kind of having to build in the fees into their prices, right? Like what are buyers going to actually buy this for? And so you kind of, when you were the seller and you almost had a little bit more control over what the buyer was seeing. Now you kind of got to figure like, now what will the buyer see? How do I have to make sure that my number kind of is still competitive for that?
Yeah, I mean, I think I don't know. We'll just see what happens. I mean, well, if in 6 months Mercari declares bankruptcy, then obviously it failed. If in 6 months, they claim that their businesses grew and they took more of the marketplace, I think that'd be a win for sellers all around. Like my advice to you is, there is already I think there's a beta program if you're like a pro Mercari seller where AI will take all your listings and move it over. I don't know how smooth it is. I haven't done it. There's also Vendu that will take care of it. And the beauty of Vendu is that you can cross-post to multiple places, not just Mercari, and you don't have to be that pro seller person on Mercari. So it'll just be interesting. It'll be interesting. I haven't yet cross-posted to Mercari, but I'm going to start after this news. I was busy trying to get everything over on Poshmark, and now I'm going to move over to Mercari. And so I'll update you guys on how that goes. But yeah, check out our live because we talk about it a lot more on our live. All right. I just wanted to bring up the story because I wonder how often this happens, and it's kind of a funny story. So this happened over in Wisconsin. Okay, this is from WFMZ, and they said the blockbuster movie certainly put the plastic doll back into high demand. So when one was found at the bottom of a river in Wisconsin, a bidding war began. Wolf River Barbie, Waterlog Barbie. She has a lot of nicknames. You can also call her the $1,000 Barbie because she was just sold for $1,225 in an auction on eBay, and it's money that will go towards cleaning up our waterways. Ed Bieber, a scuba diver who picks up trash for fun while diving. He picks up trash he finds while diving, not for fun. He says it all started about 5 years ago, just picking up fishing lures on the banks and on the water, trying to get his own lures back, and then escalated from there. Ed's been on a mission to clean up the rivers and so on. So he found the 1990s Barbie. He said, I was up close to the dam, the gates were closed, and I was getting a lot of beer cans, soda cans out there. And then I see Barbie sticking out of the rocks, and I grabbed her. Bieber said, first one I've ever found, and I was pretty excited. Friends suggested he try and sell it, so he started an auction on eBay for 99 cents. Within a day, bidding was up to $100, and when bidding ended, the Barbie was sold to a woman in Wisconsin for $1,225. And if you see the picture, this Barbie, you can check her out on our Instagram. She looks rough. She's been through it. I mean, it's if you think of what a Barbie looks like that's been at the bottom of a river for who knows, since the 90s, maybe. I'm surprised. This must have fallen in the last few years. There's no way this Barbie survived from 1990 to now at the bottom of a river. But I wonder how many people now are going to throw Barbie into the mud, mess up its hair, and go look at what I found, and try to get part of it $1,000.
I'm sure part of it is that it was obviously already vintage, but then it's the publicity, right? Like things like that don't tend to happen every time. But when you get the news, it's a story, it gets some publicity. That kind of stuff isn't easily replicated. But I get what you're saying. That it'd be funny to. But there is already a market for people making things look more vintage. People making things to a certain style. There's things on Etsy that do that. So, I don't think people will do that, but it is just one of those things that goes to show this guy has an interesting, story. He's picking up trash and so it's interesting, but it goes to show that even I'll never forget hearing those things about the haunted dolls. If you go on eBay, there's tons of haunted doll things. And what it really is just fiction. People create fiction, they write up funny stories, and some people buy them. And it's almost like this subgenre of silliness in some ways, but some people are into that. So yeah, could you do that again? Probably not. But if you're creative enough, you could probably find a way to get some hype on an item. If you can get some people to start talking about it, starts going viral on social media for whatever reason. Here was something that's connected to this other thing. You could take an item that has, because it's all supply and demand, right? And if you can increase the demand on an item, whether it's, legitimate demand or it's just kind of fun hype, just think about all the Bitcoin, or not the Bitcoin, but the various cryptocurrencies that you're into. Like, how many of those actually have real value versus it's just hype right now?
Listen, so that's a whole nother world. Like, hype is what runs that world. So, all right. So anyways, I wanted to share that. Now, okay, this is another interesting thing. So I'll give a quick story here. So years ago, there was this show on Netflix. I forget what his name was, like Dirty Robbie or whatever. I forget what his name was. Slobby Robbie, I think is the name. And it was like all his vintage stuff, right? He would sell vintage clothing, right? And it was on Netflix and became pretty popular. And we talked about it on the show here. And I remember watching that show, and they went into this huge like vintage warehouse in Los Angeles. And Los Angeles is only like, 2 hours away from here. And I'm like, I want in that vintage place. Like, I want to source there. So I somehow found out the name. I think I listened, like I watched the episode carefully, and I reached out and I'm like, hey, what's it take for me to get here and get inside? And because at this time, like rag houses, they're pretty like exclusive. Like you used to have to, I remember back in the day, like you had to drop like $2,000 at a rag house to be able to just source there. Like if you did not walk away dropping $2,000, like you weren't allowed to buy. You also had to have a reseller permit. And it was one of those that you don't post on social media. Like I remember being in there, and at one time I took out my cell phone, and I guess somebody thought I was looking up, not looking up, but you're allowed to look up comps, but you're not allowed to shoot video. And I remember they must have thought I was shooting video, and they're like, hey, put that phone away. You're not allowed to have that in here. And I remember going like, whoa. Like, and then there were signs all over saying, like, if you use your cell phone, you're going to be banned. And it used to be like very like on the low, like you didn't share it. And I wouldn't share it on the podcast. I was going to Targon, which is that's the name of this place. I'm giving free advertising. I remember I would go like once a month, and I'd find all about a bunch of vintage pieces, and it was pretty awesome. And you did pay. I mean, you had, when I went, it was a minimum of $500. Now I think they upped it to like you have to spend $750 a pop when you're there on stuff. And I remember I didn't share it because I felt that there was this understanding amongst the vintage people there, the vintage sellers that were there.
The
like
vintage
they
people.
didn't want the vintage, they didn't want this shared, right? Because a lot of them would buy stuff and go to the Rose Bowl, or a lot of them would just sell on eBay. It was and it was super quiet. Like I'd go there, and there was maybe like 5 people in this massive warehouse, and it was beautiful, really quiet. You could throw some headphones, you can source. And I would spend like 8 hours sourcing in this place. I found one of my like biggest clothing items that I thought was pretty cool. I found a Mambo Loud shirt, which is a Hawaiian shirt from Australia. And I sold it for like $500 or whatever, right? And so I found some other stuff that was equivalent to that in this place. And so I never said anything about it because I wanted to respect the community and everything. And so I'm like on TikTok these days, and man, the vintage market, I think they're at a peak. I don't know if it's going to crash. But I got to tell you, like, this info is everywhere, like everywhere. And so, I Googled and I found this GQ article. This was back just about 2 weeks ago. This is on GQ. It says how vintage clothing became the hottest thing in fashion. They said it's the inspo behind your favorite designer's latest runway show and the fuel for every TikTok born core on your feed, which explains why everyone's suddenly hunting for vintage clothing. And then they provide this huge guide. And I remember when I went to Targum pre-2K, not pre-2K, pre-COVID, before 2020, like it was pretty chill. Like you go there, the prices were reasonable. I mean, it was like, you want to buy a what do you call it? I have a Shots leather jacket, and those the SCHOTT, those sell for like $500 or $700. I have like 3 of them here that I haven't listed. I just remembered I need to list them. And, you could buy them for like $20, $30, maybe 40, maybe 50 at the most. And then after COVID happened, I remember going back, and it was like, you could not find these jackets. And if you did, you were paying top dollar for these jackets. And I'm like, what happened? Like, what has changed? And so this article says the current shift to vintage is led by zillennials. Have you heard the term zillennials? Not millennials, zillennials. Okay.
Is it like the in-between? Like young millennials and old Gen Z,
or just another way of saying Gen Z. I don't know. But you know, vintage. They said vintage has been rising in visibility and desirability. The world of secondhand can look a lot like luxury fashion, sticker shock, and all menswear. And people are just commenting. And they said, will the vintage boom last? Sample of Depop sees fast fashion brands like Shein, which relies on a disturbingly algorithmic real-time retail production chain that has been trending new designs to market in days as the enemy number one. Shein shows up and can get things from ideation to shipping faster than anyone ever has, he says. Dealers like Rowe complain that discarded fast fashion is now clogging the thrift stores and rag houses where they once scored much of their inventory. So they go on this whole thing about how pretty much like it's the thing. Like everybody wants vintage. And here's a surprising thing. I go on TikTok and Targom has like a location like in Texas and LA. And like I see all these people with their videos, like their phones, like in Targom, like, hey, this is what I picked up. Here's the stacks stuff. And I'm like, what? That was like outlawed. Like that was like huge. Like you do not do that. And now it's like the trendy, it's a cool thing. And I've spoken to the owner of Targom directly multiple times, and he was telling me how vintage is booming. And this was like the last time I went there was in 2021. And I say there's no gatekeeping. So, you know, I'd be careful in the vintage market right now because yes, it is still selling and there's still money to be made. But I'm pretty sure prices are dropping and they're dropping fast. I don't do a lot of vintage clothing like I used to. I'm into vintage toys and collectibles. But you know, I'm pretty sure the price of shirts that used to sell for like $1,000 or like $2,000, now it's like 200, 300, maybe 500.
It comes back to that idea of that supply and demand, right? So part of it was there was less supply out because people were holding on to vintage stuff. People weren't necessarily sourcing vintage stuff, so a lot of it was not making it on the sites. From. Right. So a lot of that stuff was getting on eBay, or was not making it to eBay or other, you know, reselling platforms. But now that it's trendy, everybody's out doing it. And so again, just like you're willing to pay higher ad revenue or you know, your dynamic ad rate because, well, I need these items to sell. So if people are buying these items, then they want those items to sell. And if now there's tons more competition, but the demand hasn't increased with it. And the demand has certainly increased with vintage. Otherwise, this wouldn't be popular. Oh, yeah. But if the supply is increasing, I mean, the supply technically can't increase because it's vintage. But as far as the available supply increases at a faster rate than the demand does, then the prices will drop for sure. And then also other places are going to know, like it's like anything. Like people didn't know certain things were valuable. And then once it gets popular, once everybody knows that certain things are valuable, well, then you're not going to find those things at garage sales or on Facebook Marketplace as easily, not just because you have more competition picking those things up, but people aren't going to sell them at those things because they know, oh, this is actually worth money. Like I know this is worth money because I saw it on the news. I see it on TikTok all the time. So I'm not going to sell it at the garage sale. I'm going to try and sell it myself.
Yeah. It's just shocking to me. I mean, I've seen like TikToks where people are like, here's how to get a bale of wholesale vintage from this location at this price. Here's where I source this. And I'm like, whoa, like I respected the vintage community. So I never brought up those situations because, you know, it was kind of like, I didn't want to be that guy to expose things. But now
just imagine you could have been that guy. Yeah, you could have been that guy. You could have been the first one. You could have been the trendy one, Orlando. It could have been us. It could have been Pure Hustle Podcast. No, we could have been the ones on TikTok making it popular.
Yeah, I'll never forget getting yelled at for possibly videoing. Like, it stuck with me, and I was like, yeah, I'm never gonna do that again. So, yeah, things have changed. Things have changed. All right.
Well, hey, you ready for our bolos?
Oh, we got bolo. Yeah, man, we've been chatting a lot. Yeah, what's some bolos here?
All right, so let me pull up our bolo sound effect real quick.
Bolo. What's your bolo?
All right, so my bolo is coolers, right? Like the coolers you take to the beach, can coolers, whatever you call them, like coolers, right? These can be very profitable, especially vintage ones, like even vintage Coleman. Like we all know Yeti, right? Like we all know, like if you see a Yeti, obviously you can sell that for good money. But a lot of times if you're at garage sales, there's like old camping stuff. You find camping stuff all the time, camping, fishing, those types of things. And if you got vintage coolers, even Coleman coolers, Can be very profitable. Now, I don't like shipping big items like that. So if I'm buying them off of Facebook Marketplace or I'm getting them at garage sales, I tend to try them, flip them locally. Now you can, like if you get one that's like really vintage, I could sell it for more than, it'd probably have to be at least 150 before I'm willing to start moving it onto eBay, just because the size of the boxes and the shipping. But even locally, you're going to do really well flipping those things. And a lot of times they're overlooked. People see a cooler, they kind of see them as like kind of grungy and old. And well, I've got my nice new one. Why would I look at this cooler here? Don't pass up coolers. At least look them up. There could be some money there. And if you don't like selling local, you could still sell them online if they've got good comps.
Yeah, one of my best coolers was a Yeti cooler. I paid $30 for it, and I sold it for $400 in a week. So
yeah, that's
they're
nice.
out there. Most people know, but the value of Yeti. But you never know. You never know. All right, so mine is kind of an interesting one. So as I've been rearranging things because I finally got the floors done, and I'm able to, because if you guys don't know, I got flooded in the Great San Diego flood early February, and I've been going through boxes of just old inventory, and I came across a box of like hair dryers and stuff, and I was like, oh, I haven't listed this, so I list them, and sure enough, like within 24 hours, like sold. And we're talking about like Brookstone. Like you don't think about when you think of Brookstone, I think about that store in the mall where everything was like expensive, but they had like cool stuff, but I would never buy it. Kind of like Sharper Image, back in the day.
Or like the Sky Mall, right? Like the stuff you get in an airplane, like just like random
on the airplane. Yeah, you'd always look at to be like, that's so cool, but I would never buy that. And so I sold like 2 Brookstones within like 24 hours for like close to $100. So one for like 40, one for like 50 something. And then I started doing some researching. And then when I went on eBay, like if you find the Dyson ones, like obviously anything Dyson, like those sell for good money. There's also Baby Bliss, I think it was called. There's also Shark hair dryers. Like I don't think about hair dryers when I think about Bolo, but the sell-through rate was incredible. The ones I have been selling. And so definitely check out hair dryers because there is money to be made. Okay, and real quick before we go on and finish up our show about what we're looking forward to, the way I wrap all these items in bubble wrap is American Bubble Boy. So if you haven't tried out American Bubble Boy, check out their link below. You get 5% off their tape, and you're like, 5% off? That's nothing. The reality is their tape is super, super affordable. $34.99. You get a box of 12 rolls of tape. I forget what the yards are. You can check out online. But it's a great deal. You can use our code Pure Hustle there. But hey, just getting the bubble wrap. And for me, it's been like next day delivery. If I order like on a Monday, I'll get it by Tuesday, sometimes Wednesday at the latest, and it's free shipping. So if you haven't yet checked out American Bubble Boy, check out American Bubble Boy. All right. What are you looking forward to here as we wrap things up?
Yeah, I mean, I'm looking forward to the Eclipse. I'm not doing the reselling thing on it or just the hustling, but I'm going to enjoy the family day. They're giving us the day off from school. So that's going to be exciting. And then maybe this weekend, since it's not Easter weekend, there'll be some useful garage sales. What about you?
There you go. It's kind of interesting. I want to see how this dynamic ad rate with no cap plays out, right? Because even while we're talking on the podcast, like I've sold like 3 or 4 items, and I'm just like that's not normal. Like these days, like it's like it's kind of it got so bad that if I got like a bunch of sales in a row, it was like, wow, like what a surprise. Where I want to see this be a normal thing. So I'll update you guys on that. Obviously, I'm looking forward to garage shows. I'm looking forward to going back to the bins. But I'm looking forward to seeing where we're at in 2025. And I know that sounds weird, but things have been rough for a lot of resellers, and I do think this Q4 things should be a lot better. I think in January 2025, I think the economy will just start picking up for multiple reasons, and so I encourage all of you that right now reselling is tough. It's not easy, but do what you can. If you gotta start running whatnots, if you have to start doing more local deals, if you have to go to promoted listings. If you have to like let go of stuff for less than normal, like I encourage you to do that. Don't hold on to that price right now. Unless you have stuff that is going to make good money. Like if you hold, because right now, right, things that are hard to sell are things that people don't need, right? You know, like I've talked about how I have a lot of artwork is very valuable, but no one's like even moving, no one's offering me, no one's messaging. You know, do what you can to move stuff at this point in time, because I do things will rebound. So I'm looking forward to that. I know that's a long term looking forward to, but that is what I'm looking forward to. Hey,
Nice.
So if you enjoyed this podcast and you want to, you know, delve more into our episodes, make sure to subscribe to us on YouTube. Check out our live that we just dropped in our discussion on Mercari, and hope to see you there. And hopefully a lot of you gained something from this podcast. With that being said, make sure to be real,
be relevant,
and be reselling.
peace.